Hello, friends. Welcome to another Adobe Fresco pro tip. My name is Fabiola Lara, and I'm a Chilean American illustrator and podcaster. And today I'm going to share with you how you can use Adobe Capture with Adobe Fresco to supercharge your illustration process in Adobe Fresco. Okay, let's go over what we're going to do today because it's like honestly, I'm so excited for this lesson. Okay, so you're in Adobe Fresco. Here I have my little artwork. I have it all hidden tidy in a folder, so everything seems more organized than it is. But I want to show you how you can use Adobe Capture, which is a separate app, to do things like create your own custom brushes. Here I have Charcoal Pencil V2. Clearly, that's a brush I made because it has a V2 on it. Then you can also start importing your own shapes. So in other lessons, I've gone over the shapes that you can create and add into Adobe Fresco. Well, here where it says My Library, you can start playing with your own shapes and bringing them in. So if I click that, it's right here. And now I have this shape that looks a lot like the rest of my illustration process and my illustration style right in here. And I can choose to do vector or pixel. So check that out. And that has like all this gritty, beautiful texture that I absolutely love as an illustrator. And then the brush, I wanted to be sure that I showed you it. I created this one called Charcoal Pencil V2. And I'm going to hide this because it looks insane. Check it out. Yep, that's my brush right there. Doesn't that look super legit? And I made that. I used that brush all throughout this process, obviously changing the color and changing the size. But look how like chunky and juicy it looks, all that texture that I want for my illustration work. And it works like any of the other brushes. So once you create it, you have all those other custom properties that you can customize throughout your illustration process. And it's your own brush. So you're not relying on other people's brushes, even though there's no shame in that. It's just nice to have one that's just yours. Okay, let me show you how I actually did all of that because that's kind of the final result, but there's a process before you get to this stage. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is jump on over to Adobe Fresco. Look at that. Conveniently, I already had it loaded up. Who'd have thought? Okay, Adobe Capture is an amazing app. It's available for iPhone and iPad, and it lets you create all these additional assets that then get loaded up into your Adobe Creative Cloud so you can use across different apps. Today, we're going to talk about how you can use it with Adobe Fresco specifically, but if you want to check what tools you can use with what apps, you can just hit here. The pattern builder, you can use custom patterns in the apps below, Illustrator and Photoshop. So we can't use that in Fresco today, which is why I'm not covering it. But Shapes is compatible with Fresco, so we're going to talk about that one. Graphics is also compatible with Fresco, but I'm not going to get to that one today because I want to show you brushes, and this one's compatible with Fresco and then Desktop, Illustrator, and Photoshop. So this is my favorite ones, these two. So for shapes, here's how we're going to get started. When you open up Capture, you'll probably be here in libraries. You won't have a library if you've never done it before, so no sweat. I want to get you oriented a little bit with Adobe Capture so that you actually feel confident to go start using it yourself. Okay, so when you're in here, instead of hitting libraries, you're going to go to Create. You're going to go to compatible shape, what am I saying? You're going to go to shapes and then hit create. Okay, it opens up your camera, right? It's probably going to prompt you to give it the permission to, but this is why I like Capture, because I can take this drawing that I made over on this piece of paper, the scrap paper. I made it just for us, okay? So you can take this and import it into Adobe Capture. So I'm going to show you exactly how I do it real time here so you can see how easy it is. So I hit create over on the shape on the iPad, create. I'm going to put this photo here, okay? Now you're seeing my desktop. We're breaking like the fourth wall, I think. Okay. So with the camera on my iPad, I just kind of zoom it into that drawing. And now here you have a slider on the right that lets you kind of choose how much information you're pulling in. So I don't want it to be that like blown out. That's pretty dark and it's starting to pull other information. So about there's what I want. But then you can also see on the left and the right that we have other properties here, other things that we can select. So you have a flashlight that turns on your backlight. Sometimes you may need that. You have contrast here. You have masking if you wanted to flip it. You also have the auto clean. When you hit that, it automatically takes a photo and cleans it up, which in our case is exactly what we want to do. And then the last one lets you, right here, the bottom left, it kind of gives you all these other adjustments that you can make if you wanted to customize it. Say I wanted to pixelate it, I could pixelate it right here. And then I have other sliders to pixelate it more or less. Now I like the original. Maybe I'll adjust the exposure here. So if I adjust it up or down, I get a different kind of shape that I can bring in. I like this one, so then I'm going to hit the check right here, and it brings us to this other menu. Here, you get to refine it even further. So if I hit this eraser, you can kind of erase just with your finger these other marks that maybe you don't need as a part of this shape, just to make sure it's really nice and tidy. You can zoom in and erase everything. Oops, too much erasing. Undo. Okay. And just really start tidying it up. That's why I really like using it on my iPad because I have more space to look at it. But you could also use it on your iPhone if you were just have an iPhone, say you don't have an iPad. That totally works too. You're just gonna have to zoom in and it'll be a little bit of smaller screen, but it's no big deal. Then you hit done. I'm gonna crop it so that the actual like space that it takes up is less. Oop. Okay, and right now I'm just using my finger for all this. And if you want to, you could go and smooth it in other apps. I don't really particularly want the smoothing, so I'm not going to hit it. I'm going to hit save, and now you can name it. So now I'm going to name it Adobe Live Shape, so you guys see it. See when it loads up. Hit done, and then the cool thing is that it also gives you other options. So we can say, ooh, I kind of like this one as well. And I also maybe want, let's do shape 6 just in case. You can also select these patterns. The thing is that they're not usable in Fresco, so we won't see them during the stream. So I'm just going to select the other shapes and click save. Now it's saved. We're all set. Okay, let's pop on over back to Adobe Fresco. Okay, so we're in here. I'm going to just quickly select some of the shapes, the layers that I made a mess out of. Just going to delete those. I'm going to grab my pencil because it's weird to be in Adobe Fresco without your pencil. Now, over here, I'm going to hit the shape tool, and I'm going to go to my library. I'm going to let it load a little bit because I've just uploaded new shapes. I want it to load. Okay, let's see. Hasn't loaded yet, but give it a second. Okay, hold on. Maybe we need to. Sometimes you gotta like go to a different tool so that it rethinks about it. Let's close Adobe Fresco. Let all those shapes open up in reload essentially. Now let's reopen Adobe Fresco so that it pulls that back in. Let's see. Oh, I didn't hit save, but it's okay. Don't be like me. Hit save. All right. Come on, Fresco. There it is started. Okay, here we go. Let's open that back up. Thanks for your patience, you guys, while these things load. I wanted to show you how it works in real time so you can get a real sense of what's going on. Okay. My library. All right, it's still not in there, but thankfully I did it previously and it worked just great. So here's an example. You would just hit it and it should appear in here. For some reason, it's not. Maybe there's too much going on or I've selected too many things. Let me pop back into Capture just to make sure that, yeah, it's in here. So it's already in there. All right, so it just hasn't loaded for some reason, but it will one day, eventually. It'll show up. And once you're in there, you just move this shape around. And like I said, you can just fill it. Vector or pixel. And see, I really like this because I start to add those custom shapes that sometimes are hard to make with a brush. Like if I wanted to actually use this, make this with a brush instead of a shape, it would look really digital. But now I have this really chunky shape that no one else has access to, which I think is a cool thing because now you're getting textures in your work that are going to be very like analog and traditional based, which is super, super fun. Okay. And see, here it is. I changed the opacity. I put it on multiply to show you like how you could use a texture like this in your work and just mix using both traditional and digital materials to create these illustrations. So here I have it. And I want to show you also, aside from that, how you could do it with vector. So if I hit shapes and then I go to another layer and I use the same stamp, I press fill, it's going to ask me, I could say vector. And now I have this vector shape, which is infinitely scalable, which you didn't have before. If you had just a pixel, if you were to just scan this in, it wouldn't be infinitely scalable. You'd have to go into Illustrator, clean it up and all that stuff. And now you don't. So I really, really love using Adobe Capture for this and just adding textures. Even for me as an illustrator, I don't use a ton of vector stuff and I still find use out of it because I can now blow this up and have like just some cool textures in the back of my illustrations that are going to really make it stand out from all the digital work that's out there. Okay, great. Wonderful. Another thing I want to show you and deep dive is the brushes because brushes are like super important in Adobe Fresco. And if you're using Adobe Fresco, you want to have your own custom brushes, probably, or you've thought about it. Okay. So everything that actually I used in this illustration is all a custom brush that I made myself. And I'm going to show you exactly how I did that. Now we have some other options. Jump back here. Here we go. Okay. So in Create, you're going to scroll down and hit brushes and hit create. Now it loads up your camera once again. I'm going to make a new brush just to show you. This would be more like a stamp brush. So if you were to zoom in here on one of these stars, let's say I want to make a brush that has just a ton of stars, you can use the slider on the right to figure out how much you want to input, you want the camera to input. Essentially what you want the camera to capture for the brush. So I kind of want it like there, and I think I can refine it from here. So you enter all of these other settings. So I go to crop, and I'm going to crop it in a little bit because I want the star to be right kind of at the center. And at the style, you have a ton of different styles. So here is kind of more of a stamp brush that I would use if I wanted to make a stamp of little stars. In the crop, you want to kind of crop out anything you don't use. So I want to get rid of the of that bit of gray area. So I want to minimize that, see if I can cut it out. You just have to play with it a bit. There we go. It's out. Oops. I had it. There we go. And then in crop, adjusting here, press save. Oops, hold on. I don't want to save it yet. I want to refine it a bit. So from here, this is a pixel brush. You can go into all these other settings to adjust it. So under settings, you can adjust the size of the brush, the flow, whether you want it to be linear or mirrored. Now this brush is kind of an insane brush that I've made, but I just wanted to show you some of the options that you have. And you can see here, I'm testing it. I can play with how it actually turns out. I kind of love it. It would be a fun brush to use, or just if you want to stamp 1 or 2 stars, you could do it just like that. You could do tapering. So you have a ton of options in the properties panel to refine this brush. And I just find it so fun, and another way that you can start adding these custom elements into your process without having to spend hours and hours or weeks refining a brush. Okay, so then I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to name this brush Star Stamp because that's probably how I'll use it. Okay, done. Save. Okay. Another way you could do a brush instead of a stamp, if you want to create line art, I actually have it imported here. I already took the image because I wanted to get a really good image. So if I go to my camera roll and go into Fresco, I have this image here. Oops. All right. Okay, here it is. Now, I want to make sure that I capture basically just the line. So here you can see I have just the line. I'm going to deselect anything I don't want to select. Okay. It gets a little wild sometimes in here as you're trying to make these adjustments, but I'm just going to click next, and then I'm going to go into crop. So basically, you want to crop it so it's only the line. Something that I realized when I was working with brushes is that the straighter the line that you have, the better it's going to kind of join when you are drawing. So try to get a really straight line. And then here it says tail, body, and head. So I'm going to actually open it up just to show you. So head is going to be kind of the beginning of the mark. So when you draw, the beginning of the mark is kind of that head space. So I want it to be maybe just that little bit. And then the tail is the end. So you kind of dictate where that tail is. And I'm going to narrow in on the body so that it's really aligned and kind of as straight as possible. You can use those grid marks in there. It looks small to you right now, but on your iPad, you can kind of adjust it perfectly. So there you have it. And in style is where you get to pick what style of brush. So if you're scanning something in and it's coming in like stamped instead of a ribbon line, here's how you can change it. Now it shows you previews of the brushes. So let's go through them. So this one is kind of similar. Let me see if I can make this just bigger just to show you guys. So this is kind of what this brush is saying. It's definitely a certain look, but it's not what I'm going for. Here's another ribbony brush. So it gives you a lot of options with how you can use what you captured to create a brush. Now, I really like these. They're ribbon brushes and they're all slightly different. So you kind of just have to test out which one you prefer for your illustration. Oops, I tried to zoom in, but of course it just made a line. Okay. I ended up really, I kind of like that one or this one. And they all have slightly different textures of the way that they're actually using what you captured for the line. So I'm going to go with this one. The crop is really good. I'm going to go refine the settings. So let's make this one really chunky. So the one I already have in Fresco is not super chunky. I'm going to make this one real chunky. And now this is actually a image I took of a charcoal brush that I just made on a scrap piece of paper. So I'm going to make a nice big line to show you here. Now, if it gets too big, you can see where that head and tail didn't meet exactly. So sometimes I adjust it smaller so that that's not as noticeable. And then you fix the flow. But obviously the way to actually fix that and make it perfect would be to get a better photo where that line is straighter and that head and the tail meet at a better point. But you can also fix how it repeats to kind of mitigate that. So you can say stretch, and that kind of accounts for that. But I still prefer mirror, I think. I'm going to go with that. Size, flow, velocity. I kind of want it to be heavier. So I'm going to do a heavier line. Size is good there. And you can just adjust these settings. I don't like the taper because I really like that chunky ending, that abrupt ending. So I'm going to leave that. But you could also do a fade, which kind of looks good. I'll leave the fade. Okay. And then refine, just to refine it even more if you wanted to. We could try and adjust maybe the way that those two things are connecting. You can use your fingers. Oh, this is actually just for the background. Sorry, guys. There's so many of the similar named things that sometimes when I go to a new page, it's hard to remember which does what. But here we go. I'm going to adjust it, and you can see how that is affecting the line, which I really like that it shows you live how that would be affecting it. I'm going to do it maybe like there. Now it's really dark, which I like, and I don't have a brush like that. So I'm going to hit save. I'm going to call this Chunky Charcoal Chunky Charcoal, because I don't have one named that. I'm going to hit save. I want to make sure everything is loaded. Okay, I'm going to hit save now. Perfect. saved. Now, someone suggested reloading my Adobe Creative Cloud. So I'm going to go over to Creative Cloud, which is another app that kind of manages all the apps that you have, and just make sure everything is properly, all my libraries are loaded up. Synced libraries. Oops. Clicking too many options, guys. Libraries. Okay. I think everything's loaded. Okay, let's go back over to Fresco. Now I have a lot of apps open. I'm going to close them for the sake of the stream. Okay, so now we're in here. Let's see if this brush loads up. So if you go to the brush tab or the brush tool, sorry, I forgot my words there, and you hit my library, here is where those brushes will come in. So it says one unsupported brush is because I actually made a vector brush. You can make it in the same way in Adobe Capture, but it doesn't show up in here, even though there's vector brushes. You have to use it on Illustrator, but it's still cool to have that option. I'm gonna say import. I'm just hitting these things to see if it will start loading all my other brushes. I'm not sure why it's not loading it. Let's see. Give me 1 second. I want to make sure I'm understanding what's going on in here. I love Adobe Capture. Sometimes when you're working, it takes a second to import it, and then other times they appear like magic. So I feel like I'm doing something on my end that's not letting it load. See, as a lot of other brushes haven't loaded either. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to Adobe Capture and see if I can get it to a reload here. So I'm going to go to my libraries, my brushes. I have brushes down here. Oh, now none of my brushes are showing up. Okay. It says my libraries are synced. Let's try again. I'm going to open a new document. I think that will do the trick. So let's go ahead and open a new document and see if all those things finally load up. Create new. I'm going to say, I'm just going to do, here we go, 300 by 300. 3,000 by 3,000. Okay, let's see. Let's see if these brushes are in here. My library. There we go. Chunky charcoal. I found it. I think that file just had too much going on in there. And so this is a brush we just made based off a photo. And I love it because I can actually use this with any color. So I have a library of colors that I prefer, but I only have a charcoal pencil in black. And I'm able to use it digitally in every color and also not have to bother sharpening it. So it's amazing. You guys don't know if you're in the stream right now, I'm so happy that I finally got these to load. But here we go. Here is the chunky charcoal that we just worked on. Looks pretty good. Probably could use a little tweaks in terms of the photo that I worked with, but it's still really great. And it behaves like any other pixel brush, which is the best part. Oh, that thought it was a circle. Oops. Let's do a circle and do the snapping. All right, so it's not the most refined brush I've ever made, but it's really fun. And then here we have the star stamp. I'm gonna do it in pink. Oh my goodness, how cute is that? Let me bump it up to be a little bit bigger. It's like pressure sensitive. It's so cute. And now in any illustration, if I want to add my own stamp, it's like super easy. If I want to add a little star, I can go like that, and then maybe I can just cut it out, press cut selection, paste it, and have all my own stars. Looks like I scanned it in, but I didn't, and it's on a transparent layer, which is really rewarding if you are a traditional artist and you know how hard it is to clean up your work. You can make your own brush, and then you don't have to actually clean up your work when you want to make it transparent. And the other thing I wanted to share with you guys was that shape that we made. Let's see if it actually is in here now. My library. Yes, those two shapes that we made live are in here, and they are totally different. I'm going to do vector. Look at that. Oh, I love it. There's so much you could do here because now I can use this vector to, let's say, do some watercoloring in a different color so you can actually see it. You can start using these shapes in so many different ways once you import them and just start amassing this library that lets you do like more and more every single time you open up Adobe Fresco. So I am so glad I could show you how easy that was. If you don't have Adobe Capture, be sure to download it because you can do so much more. If you go over to create, you can learn even some of the other things that you could customize. So another shape that I drew once, I drew it in my sketchbook. I drew a friend's dog, and then I was able to just bring it in as a shape by scanning it using Adobe Fresco. And now I have it here and I can maybe add a dog every time I want, anytime I want to. So it's really helpful to have these shapes, especially when you're just building up your illustration library, building up textures that you want to use. If you want to make a texture a vector, here's how you can do it super, super quickly. I can't wait to see your custom brushes, you guys. And be sure to tune in tomorrow for the stream and for our after party where you can get your questions answered live on the stream. So thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.